Server meshing is needed before Star Citizen is anything near resembling an MMO, a massively multiplayer online game. There is some confusion and drama about exactly what form this will take though. The idea is to have thousands or more players on a single mega server that's all meshed together, enabling them to seamlessly interact with each other, and we had a little bit more information on this at CitizenCon, but also a lot more from Cloud Imperium's Chad McKinney from his Twitter. And I want to talk about a very quick summary of the CitizenCon server meshing presentation, and also talk about sharding, and then Chad's statements and what it all means for the game. As it's a little bit vague and a bit complex, and in some cases it's been a bit polarizing to some members of the community. Object containers have the appropriate assets, entities, and info streamed into a player. Object containers can be a planet or a star system, but also nested in each other down to a single room or even an asset like a weapon or an attachment within a room. Every object and asset in each object container has all of its information stored, and there can be parts that can be modularly attached to that item as well, so a gun can have scopes on it, things like that. Bind culling then streams out objects and object containers that are no longer needed by the player. Server meshing plans to have object containers be able to act as servers individually based on local population and merge them with others or be spun down when they're not needed. And it's all seamless. No one knows that's going on from a sort of gameplay and player point of view. You just fly around in your spaceship and interact with the verse and play with loads of players, and you don't know that you're actually on a totally different server than the ship next to you. Currently, each server has a cap of 50 players in Star Citizen at the moment. It's not great. It's very sort of basic, and they don't affect the greater Star Citizen universe either at the moment. So Cloud Imperium are working on sharding. Multiple versions of the universe will basically be created and kept in parallel, partially for redundancy and restoration, but also to house more players. Very much, at least in the short and medium term, there's no way to have thousands of players in a single area. But with sharding, they can have all these different players on different servers and all affecting the main mega server, the main sort of like universe simulation, which then affects all players' experiences. This is supposed to be quite a scalable solution and is going to be much more important when servers house thousands or more players each, and we'll have to see how that technology evolves. Server meshing will also ensure that these shards all affect the same greater simulation and that players affect each other's experience appropriately. So there is going to be some interesting logic in what that actually means. Who am I actually going to be on a shard with? Who am I going to be on a server with? How locked to that shard am I going to be? Will there be regional servers that I'm locked to? Well, we actually get some of these questions answered a little bit later. Cloud Imperium also have a replication layer that they've been working on that basically takes a snapshot of the universe that then helps with that, as well as the entity graph database, ensuring that data copy problems don't occur. So they can roll back data if they need to. They know what the data's supposed to look like. There's a lot of redundancy there. There's a lot of sort of error checking there. So we should have a nice stable universe where things don't disappear randomly. This will also see your persistent data saved and have ships, states, and bases all around the universe all saved. So they can go, bam, you log back in, and your base is there, and your ships are there, and the things that you left and changed, they are affected by what you did, at least to some extent. Obviously there's going to be some cleanup, there's going to be some ways that these things get regenerated, and some logic behind, well, these guys actually move out and this stuff despawns, and these shell casings, they're not important. But Cloud Imperium did also sort of imply that these items and this stuff follows you around. It's loaded in and out with you. So you go back onto a shard, or your shard, and your ships spawn there. They weren't there and stayed there while you logged out. The idea is all that this is all seamless to the player and the players around that player, but it might be a bit more complicated than that. What happens when players are logging off that might own the ship, but that ship moves because other players are on that ship and they're moving it around? When looking at bases and interactions with players and orgs, could two different players have a base in exactly the same place technically on two different shards, but can they never meet then afterwards? Or does the greater simulation not allow for that to happen? So there's lots of edge cases here, there's lots of questions that occur here, and admittedly they can't answer all of this stuff because they haven't finished the tech yet. It is quite a long way out. Items are saved or stowed when you log out or not using them. So basically you unstow an item when it's active, when you're using it, when you've loaded it in. If you're flying around in your ship, that's an unstowed item. All of your ships in storage, they're stowed until you bring them out. So that's the way the server sort of saves them. They make it lighter weight information, basically, by going, well, actually, we only need to track what's going on with these unstowed items. We are going to see some of this tech start to be phased in over the next few patches, but the first sort of major implementation we're going to see is static server meshing, and that will have different areas of space and planets controlled by fixed servers. So the area around Microtech, and Microtech is its own server technically, and then, well, and actually, and then you have the area around ArcCorp. Bam, that's its own server. And you move between them seamlessly. You don't know that you're moving between servers. That means even at worst case scenario, at this sort of like very short term level, we would have, 8 different servers running a single sort of system instance. And that means that you could have, 400 players spread out across those servers potentially. Though it does appear that even this requires major updates before it's ready. We know that Cloud Imperium are working very much on all of this tech, on server meshing, all the tech behind it, sharding, and all of that jazz. But the actual minutiae and the detail, we don't know what's going on with that. And we won't know until a bit further down the line. More to this, Cloud Imperium's Chad McKinney on Twitter talked about server meshing and sharding, and good man for doing this. He got a lot of flack from some people in the community because he was giving some answers to the best of his knowledge and ability, but obviously people want to know as much as possible, and where there's no clear answers yet, they sort of like, you get flack from that, for sure. People are like, well, what do you mean? I thought it was going to be like this when it's like this. And I go, well, actually, no, this is steps towards this, or I misspoke, or well, no, I'm only explaining this element. So he said that certain features would be phased in over time. Support for multiple systems, support for global environmental persistence, better server performance, increased scalability of our instances, which will become shards, higher player counts in said shards, better fault tolerance and recovery. So that's the very short-term roadmap of some of the improvements that this tech and server meshing is going to bring. In regards to gameplay, Chad said, the goal is to make your play experience a single, consistent, seamless experience, and not this kind of instance thing we have now. Different shards will have different states, but we want eventually to scale them so dense that you and your friends are tied to a shard permanently. But what does this then mean for PvP and shards interacting with each other? Chad continued, the goal is not to have shards interact directly like this, but rather that they are so dense that your experience and that of your friends are consistently tied to a specific shard, in which case, from your perspective, there is one view of the world. To go beyond that would require a global shard, which would need further R&D and design considerations, and could very well have fundamental limitations that are not acceptable for a game of our scale. So, are there regional shards or restrictions on who interacts with them? In the case of regional shards, you'd be able to select the region. It wouldn't be locked up. The shard's history would be different, and it will mean that if you change shards like this, you will be seeing different world states, and that they don't interact. We will aim to increase shard density over time, with regional shards being a more realistic target to aim for first. A global shard has some very real issues that would need further R&D and even design considerations. There were a lot of replies and some confusion here too, with Chad going on to clarify, seems a lot of people think I'm saying there won't be a single global shard in Star Citizen. To be clear, I never said that. I'm saying that the architecture we presented for CitizenCon would need further R&D to work towards it, given our fidelity, persistence, and scale compared to other games. This doesn't mean invalidating the work we've done so far. It builds up over time, and the solutions we are working on now are required regardless. So, there were some other questions about shifting technology and how this has all changed. There's been a few shifts that happened over the years as they've developed. The biggest was the move to entity graph storage, apparently, which is a better fit for the data that they're using and their databases and all that sort of stuff for server meshing. So there have been some evolutions of this. When might all of this happen? When will we get server meshing? What's the timeline roadmap? Well, Chad says, when it's ready, which is hard to argue with because it's very accurate. Anyway, what do you think? We know that Cloud Imperium have said that Star Citizen Alpha 4.0 will come with pyro and static server meshing, among other things, and I'm hoping that's going to be around Q3 2022. Is this shockingly naive of me, or is that reasonable? Will Cloud Imperium be able to crack having everyone on the same mega server one day? Or do you think there's always going to be regional restrictions and sharding as standard? Or do you think it's actually going to be such a huge scale of sharding that it's fine? Or it's going to be actually we only have like 100 players per server and it's very sort of intrusive to gameplay? I do have some concerns about playing with friends on the same shard. I have loads of American, Euro, and Australian friends. I want to play with all of them together. Obviously, there's massive orgs which have global sort of membership. And yeah, what about orgs like Test with tens of thousands of players? How's that all going to work if they want to play together? Will they not be able to play together? Will they? But only one day. I think we won't know until the tech is further along. But whatever your thoughts, I'd love to hear from you in the comments below. Some people say I shill for NordVPN, but listen to some of these comments that I just made up. I've never fed the love of a woman before, but then I got NordVPN, and that didn't matter. Doctor said I'd never walk again, but then I got NordVPN. Now I've been running marathons. Also, I got robot legs around the same time. They might have helped somewhat too. I was a tone-deaf pirate, but after getting NordVPN, I'm able to play the saxophone. Go on, Zin, try and animate all of this. Click the links below to get NordVPN. It might lead you to a more fulfilling life, but more likely, it will just help protect you from the terrors of the internet. What ship are we giving away in October? It is one of the most exciting ships we've given away and one of the most popular. It's the Argo Cargo. So many people liked it, we thought we'd give one away instead of a Mercury Star Runner or a Carrack or something else. You can do fun things like fly around a planet or fly very slowly into the sun. And it also makes my top 16 ships that I liked in the ship showdown this year. Me and Zin are sort of on holiday for a week, so we had to quickly film a ship giveaway. So we do have CitizenCon coming up, and we may have some other things going on the channel that will make it worth your while commenting, so do what you want. I'm not your dad. You should definitely press the join button below my videos, though, and you should certainly like and subscribe, and bell bother. Click on the bell. I don't know what it does, but it makes me money somehow. I don't know. I don't know what's going on. Thanks very much for watching, though, and I'll see you in the next one.